We said, we're not going to screw this up. We're not worried about profit. We're not worried about anything else. We just want to sell this vehicle. And when we sell the car, we want the customer to feel like they've been taken care of and just they're happy. And so for over a year, especially at our domestic stores, we lost money because we were buying cars over invoice and we were selling them 1,000, 2,000 back of invoice to increase our volume and buy back our market share that we had lost.
Today, I'm excited to sit down with Christian Crain, VP of Operations at Crain Automotive, a 16-store dealer group based in Arkansas. This is a story of a dealership nearly torn apart by family drama and internal power struggles. But if you think it ends there, you haven't met the next generation. Against the odds, they're driving a surprising turnaround and putting the Crain name back on the map. So stick around if you're a fan of succession. A big thank you to our sponsors for making today's episode possible: Q Merit, CDG Recruiting, and CDK Global. And now let's get into the show. Christian Crain on the CDG podcast. Christian, welcome.
Hey, how are you?
Dude, every second is quite the moment right now. We're about to start recording and Trump announces a 90-day pause on tariffs. So it's been very hectic the last 7 days, but things are interesting for sure.
Yeah, it's a little exciting, a good way to get started. That's for sure.
I know. How's it been for you with all the tariffs on, tariffs off? Like, how's it impacted your store, your marketing, sale? I mean, give us a pulse of your business.
We've had a little bit of marketing towards the tariffs and, avoid the tariffs that are coming. But what we've really just stuck to selling at a below MSRP, which is kind of what we've done with our domestic stores primarily. And we haven't had to change anything with that. And we haven't seen a huge effect with business and how much customers are willing to buy from it. So I guess the night that it was announced like 2 weeks ago, I was like, oh my God, like we need to go in and adjust all of our new car pricing back to MSRP, because I think everyone's going to buy this last week of March. And there might have been a little bit of shift from it, but it really wasn't as big as I was thinking.
Mm-hmm. And give us a sense of your volume. So you said two things there. You said you had to adjust to go below MSRP. I didn't follow you there.
Yeah. So right now, all of our domestic stores, primarily, we've got Ford, GMC, Chevrolet, and Chrysler Dodge Jeep. The way we see is, in order to be successful there, you've got to sell volume. And what volume would look like in an Arkansas dealership is around that 150 new cars sold. And so in order to do that, we've got to compete with the other larger dealers in our market. And so it's kind of turned into a race to the bottom as far as new car pricing goes. And so when the tariffs came out, we didn't really know which models were going to be affected or not. And we just thought we might need to go back up to MSRP because we're going to sell out of everything.
Got it. Yeah, that seems to be. So still a lot every day, more uncertainty. I guess we got some certainty now, but I will say we did put out a document. You may have seen it, you may have not, where we're basically crowdsourcing all of the automaker kind of insights.
Yeah.
These are not all are publicly announced, but we're getting it from dealers internally. So we've shared that with dealers. We'll put the link in the show notes below as well for anyone that wants to access that. But it's got all the automaker updates, formal and informal. So we'll talk a lot more about that. Christian, take us back. Let's take a quick step back here. You have quite the family story. Reading through your stuff, you're operating a pretty sizable dealer group today. At one point that wasn't the case. You've grown a lot. You were OEMs almost took back the dealerships or shut you down. I'll let you kind of explain that further. But can you just start by telling us a little bit about your story and the family business story?
Yeah. So in the early 90s, my dad and grandfather together purchased a Ford dealership. And actually it was in Tennessee, in Memphis. And over the period of time, they started growing and expanding and buying more and more franchises, and we included RV dealerships, and they got to about 23 total rooftops by 2020. And so in about 2018, my dad decided to leave the company due to just some strife between him and his father, and also that led to my uncle leaving a couple years later, and we just had a really bad family dynamic because of the large success that we've seen in operating a very large company. And so to the point of, my dad not speaking to my grandfather, not just weird relationships that aren't normal in a, if you would say, a normal family. And so I always had a really close relationship with my grandfather growing up. We spent just every vacation I was with him, every manufacturer trip I was with him, JM&A trips, all that stuff. I went everywhere, and he kind of always groomed me in a way of you're going to take over this one day. This is going to be something that you can carry our family legacy on from an early age. I mean, I remember one time, I think I was probably 8 or 9, and every 8 or 9 year old boy's goal is to go play professional sports. And I think I said something along those lines, like, I'm going to be a quarterback in the NFL. And he just shut me down. He said, no, you're going to be a car dealer. And so that's kind of always been, what I've told myself I was going to do. Which feels like it's been in my blood. I knew what a PVR stood for before I was even playing with action figures or anything like that. So
That's good. I want to take a pause and talk about the cost of success that you mentioned. It's not. I would say it's more openly talked about today. It's still somewhat taboo, but you've been in a family, right? Sizable portfolio, right? Over 20 dealerships. Tell us a little bit more about that. What can you tell us, right? Because there are people listening to this that I worked in the family business for many years, and I know personally, the ups and downs. And even if you're not a family business, I
yeah.
think the reality is there's some leadership, there's some way to, that company's being operated. Tell us a little bit about, like the nitty gritty. How does something like that happen, right? Are we talking about fighting over money? Like, what drives these types of situations, or in your case?
Yeah. So, I mean, based on what I've seen and what I know happened in our family, I'm sure it's similar across several other family companies. But the biggest deterrent between a good family relationship and families that work together is control. And I don't think that there's our problems that my dad and grandfather and uncle experienced had really much to do with money, but it was more of a control issue, and not only control of the business, but just control over their lives, right? And what they can and cannot do. It's hard for any family to operate under those circumstances.
Mm-hmm. So, and take us one step further, right? So, how does something like that get resolved? And where do you come into picture,
Yeah.
right? You're a young guy, right? You've been involved in the business, but recent college graduate.
Mhm.
How do you sort of get thrown into fire here? Where does that come into picture?
Well, unfortunately, the relationships were never resolved with my grandfather. In 2023, he passed away of a cancer that just kind of came out
Mm,
of nowhere, right? And those relationships were never resolved, which I will say to anyone that is listening, it's never worth it. No amount of success is ever worth it. I unfortunately witnessed my grandfather, only have me by his side whenever he was
wow.
sick. Luckily, my
You just gave me the
that's
chills.
right.
You just gave me the chills.
And I think now, if he were able to go back and do it, he would choose relationship over profit, or relationship over control. And the way that I play into this, it's a pretty interesting story. When my dad and my uncle decided to leave Crain Automotive, my grandfather's company, and start their own stuff, their own dealerships, their own real estate companies, that was when my grandfather was extra grooming me to take over. And when I graduated college in 2021, my grandfather had hired somebody from out of state to come in right around the beginning of COVID to operate our car dealerships. And he had just he had done a very good job on paper as far as gross profits and net profits. But what he did not do was take care of the customer, take care of our employees, and just take care of the community. And so in 2021, I had the decision when I graduated to go work under this third party COO who's operating all of these dealerships incorrectly, and or go do my own thing for a little bit and see if our family dynamics chilled out to where I could actually do what I wanted to do, which was get in the car business. So I actually went and I purchased a hotel with my dad, and I was the general manager of the hotel, of a 78 room hotel in Little Rock, Arkansas for a year. That was probably where I learned the most about people and hospitality and taking care of customers. And right before my grandfather got sick in 2023, the COO that was
Hmm.
running our organization decided to quit out of nowhere, and didn't really know why, didn't provide an explanation, just left, and just left my grandfather with no leadership basically. And that was right when he started getting sick in January of 2023, and
Hmm.
was dead by April of 2023. And so when he passed away, the natural thing to do would be for it to get passed down to his sons, and then passed down from his sons to me and my siblings and cousins. Well, it was a really weird dynamic because a lot of it had been just directed straight towards me, a little bit to my dad, and a little bit to my uncle. And we got that resolved now to where the ownership is how it should have been, which is my dad and my uncle full owners and full operators of this company. But what I was what I was able to do was say, I want to seriously be involved in running these things, and that's what it's turned into, and that's what we've
Hmm.
done over the past 2 years.
Wow, I got a bunch of questions. So I could ask you, 50 right now. We'll go kind of for three and one at a time.
Sure.
So first thing, before we get into the sort of meat and potatoes here, which is your growth spurt, which you have been growing quickly, and I want to understand kind of what's driving that. All right, first things first is you mentioned that you brought in outside management, which did not work out. And I specifically noted one thing you said, which is that this person, gross profits were higher, or, I see the smirk on your face. Like, what does that mean? Are we talking, was anything like sketchy being done? Or I think the point I'm trying to get to here is there's many people in similar positions, and there's many organizations that bring in outside management.
Yeah.
And I want to know from your vantage point, like, what were the pitfalls of that?
Yeah. Well, this all happened right around COVID when there's no inventory out there, new or used, and what the strategy that he had was, let's price things over MSRP. Let's have these market adjustments and these large gross profits per new and used unit sold. And let's not worry about what manufacturers want us to sell. Let's not worry about how this is going to affect the customer long term. Let's just make a lot of
Hmm.
money while we can. And
Got it. So short term thinking.
yeah, it's and that does work. It worked for him, and it was good for our books for 2 years. But I for 2 years later, we're paying the price for that, and it's been a huge. We've
How
had
so? Tell us about that. How so?
well, the day after my grandfather passed away, we had a meeting with Kia. The Kia top management was in town, and we had to meet with them at my grandfather's lawyer's office, and they were almost ready to pull our franchises because we were not sufficient in new car sales. Our CSI scores were terrible across the board, and they were not
Wow.
satisfied with the way that we were performing due to this strategy of let's make as much money as possible.
Got it. So it's kind of like profits at all costs, short term thinking,
Sure.
running the business to the ground.
Yep.
All right. That's a problem. All right. So let's kind of go to the next step here, which is that tell us a little bit about your transition since that, because at this point, that's history, right?
Yeah.
Tell us, I'm curious to know, how has performance changed? How have numbers changed? And if you can kind of contextualize a bit of your growth.
Yeah. So I took that meeting personally with that we had with Kia and the manufacturers.
You know what you just reminded me of? The documentary, the Michael Jordan
Oh
documentary,
yeah.
The Last Dance, and he's like, and I took
Yeah,
that
I took that
personally.
person. It
That's what you just reminded
yeah,
me of.
yeah. So I mean,
That's
it's
good.
true. I took that as a spite to my family and our legacy and this brand. And so
Yeah.
that has been my, just in short, our motto has been, let's restructure the way that our business, Crain Automotive in Arkansas, is perceived by customers, and even more employees who swore the last time that they quit from a Crain Automotive dealership that they would never come back. And so what I don't know if this answers your question directly or not, but the first thing that we did was we went and hired the best general managers that money could buy, because we knew that that was where it started at every one of our locations. They are our boots on the
Leadership.
ground. That's our leadership.
What are we talking about here? Like what the money can buy? I mean, how much are we paying? What can you tell us about that?
You know, our accounting department has nicknamed me Christian Guarantee Crain because I've had to go in and give guarantees to.
You're giving out
Right,
guarantees,
right.
the good old guarantee. The
Yeah,
guarantee.
and so and I won't say that that's what keeps our people here now, but that was our biggest probably pull was that we knew that we were going to have to pay people, and we knew that we were going to have to guarantee it over a long period of time, because the pay lines, the service gross, the parts gross, it wasn't anywhere close to
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
what they
No,
needed
it's
to be
I
making.
get it. You're rebuilding and there's a cost to rebuilding.
Yeah,
And that doesn't shock me. I mean,
right.
it's not going to be there forever, but that's the whole point of rebuilding.
Absolutely.
You got to put out some guarantees sometimes, the good old guarantee.
I know.
Okay, so take us like a next step. Talk to us more about the growth and how have you been able to turn things around?
So the
And also what that even means to you, like what has turned
right.
around, if you can explain that to us.
Day one, when I walked in all of our dealerships, people weren't happy. Salesmen or salespeople, all employees, customers, and that's a big problem from day one. Customers, the way that they speak about the Crain Automotive, speak about the car business in general in April of 2023 was something that I was not happy with. I wanted to go in there and fix the people problem, make our people happy with where they work and who they work for in order to ensure that the customer is taken care of rather than having employees who are not happy just completely ruin a customer relationship because it doesn't affect them one way or the other. And so
Hmm.
I would say that just the overall vibe of our culture and the vibe of a dealership now versus 2 years has been the biggest like measure as to what the success that we want is happening.
So you're a young guy, you're previously managing a hotel, which is, sort of where you started cutting your teeth.
Sure.
And of course, you've been exposed to the business since you were a kid. How do you go about making change nowadays? Like, do people respect you?
That's a good question. This has definitely been something that I've had to earn a respect, but
Hmm.
I've always, my family and my just growing up, I've been raised in a very humble background. And so I'm not the type to go in and demand respect. I try to operate out of humility and try to make decisions with good advising from outside sources. And so pretty much the decisions that I've had to make at a very young age that affect a 55-year-old general manager have been
Hmm.
humbly communicated to them and have proven to be successful, and that makes it a lot easier for that person to accept the change that needs to be taking place.
This episode is brought to you by Q Merit. Selling EVs can have a lot of friction points, but home charging installation shouldn't be one of them. That's why dealers and automakers trust Q Merit, the go-to expert for home charging installations. Q Merit helps EV buyers get set up with the latest charging solutions, making your EV sales easier and the customer experience seamless. So dealers, if you want to boost your sales on EVs, join Q Merit's dealership partner program and start earning referral incentives on every single installation. Stop losing sales to charging anxiety. Next time a customer asks about home charging, just say, I got a guy for that. Visit qmerit.com/car guy. That's QMERIT.com/car guy to learn more, or click the link in the show notes below.
Hmm. Have there been any, or what has been the toughest decision that you've had to make, or like a super tough decision? What can you tell us about there?
It's not easy having to let somebody go that is a tenured car business guy. The car business in Arkansas, I don't know how it is for other states and areas, but it's like a middle school as far as gossip goes, and everybody knows everybody.
Really? Small town
Oh
and all
yeah,
that? Yeah.
yeah. And so it's not that's
Wow.
probably been the hardest thing for me is going in and my family and the way that I like to operate is out of true compassion and empathy for our employees. And so doing going in and letting somebody go is probably the most difficult thing for me. What I did learn at an early point was there's a reason that that person's not working at that store or that location, and if they're not working, then you're hurting the 60 or 70 other people in that dealership to keep them
Hmm.
happy. And so
Yeah, it's all connected.
Right. I've learned to look at it that way, and it's been very helpful.
What about just day to day, right? Like, how are you actually tracking the pulse of your stores nowadays? What do your days look like? What are you focused on?
Yeah, so something that our company is doing that I think is extremely important is we're really utilizing technology, and we're creating technology that we can be able to grow our dealership group to out of state and to further away to where we won't have to be in the store every single day. So we've built a software now that has been able to, it just tells us exactly everything that's going on in the store, to help us manage exactly what we need to manage. And so,
What do you mean by that? What is this software? Who built it? Like, can you be more specific?
yeah, I'll be as specific as I can.
How can I invest? Am I going to
Right.
make $100 million? I mean,
Well,
what's your social security number?
yeah.
No, I'm just kidding.
um, so the software that we're working on, and I will say there's a company out there that we've used and have been very successful with, called Dealer Ops. And Dealer Ops
Hmm.
basically takes all of your DMS data and puts it into reports that everyone can understand. And by everyone, I
Mm.
mean you could take somebody off the street that doesn't know the car business, and they can get it. They can know if the store's doing well or a store's doing bad. What we've done is we've hired some programmers and a guy that can build some really good technology from a very large company, and he's come in and made us what we call Crain Vision. And by having that software, we can know exactly all of the accounting data that we need for any sort of transaction. We know our sales for that day or any period at that moment. We know how many open ROs we've got, how many we've closed that day. I mean, it's so detailed into everything that we would need to be able to manage a single store or 20.
So yeah, I'm gonna ask. I mean, super trivial question, but why is your DMS not capable of providing that? Because it sounds like an expensive solution.
It
You
is.
know, hiring the big shot, and I've developed my own software as well. So I've been privy to the costs. But what's your how did you come to how did the org come to this decision of and why couldn't you solve that with kind of tools on the market or like your DMS analytics suite or something like that?
Right. You might get me in trouble by saying something like this, but we use Reynolds. We've used them for 25 years. We've been just doing it forever. We've got a great support from Reynolds as far as personnel goes. I do think that it's a very complicated software as far as accounting, reporting, and really anything operationally that you would need day to day for a dealer to be able to use. And so that did lead us to going to these outside reporting companies like Dealer Ops. However, we wanted to take it a step further and be able to include everything from our HR and payroll software to our marketing budgets to
Hmm.
expense reports, all of that stuff. We were trying to get into one software, and we've been pretty successful.
That's interesting. You know what I've seen lately, and this is something that everyone listening here could use this. But if just take any financial statement, right, run it through ChatGPT, and make sure to click deep research and ask your questions. Don't even think, right? Literally, just put it through ChatGPT. Say, tell me where the areas of opportunity are on this financial statement. What could be done better?
Right.
Press deep research. It's unbelievable what you'll have within 5 to 10 minutes.
Hmm.
Be very pointed with your questions if you can be. I don't know if deep research is available for free on ChatGPT, but maybe in most it's like $20 a month. I mean, it's irrelevant, but it's incredibly valuable. If you're assessing a financial statement, anything, you're looking at an acquisition, run everything through that and just see what happens and what it tells you. And it's pretty eye-opening, the information you can glean and just the insights from something so simple. So anyways, I hope someone out there does that, tries it out, loves it, and shoots us a note and says, CDG just saved us a lot of time. So
Right. And it's $200 a
um
year if you purchase it in a one-time payment.
oh,
Yeah.
can you do that?
Uh-huh.
Can you do annual? Oh, good to know. Save $40.
That's right.
I'm gonna do that. All right. So tell us more now. Tell us more about your turnaround and what's your volume today? I want to, understand a little bit about more kind of the nitty gritty of your store, new to used ratio, fixed absorption. Like, what can you tell us?
Yeah. So when we took over in 2023, the prior year, 2022, we had sold, I wrote this down, we had sold 14,000 total vehicles, and it was probably a 0.75 to 1 used to new. And
Hmm.
that was a lot to do with the fact that the manufacturers at the point and where they were with us, they weren't giving us any inventory because we weren't selling each vehicle where they wanted us to sell them, and we weren't taking care of the customers that we
So you
were
weren't
getting
even
to.
getting the proper allocation.
Right.
Yeah.
So when we met with Kia, for example, we had about we had five Kia dealerships and around less than 400 total new units on the ground whenever we took over. And so that was the first thing that we had to do. We said we have got to figure out what we're going to do with these manufacturers to let us show them what we're willing to do. And so it was tough for several of the domestic brands, especially. The first thing that I did was I called a locate company, and I just started buying as much Ford, as much Chevy and GMC inventory as I could because we weren't ever going to change the state of our company without new car inventory. And so day one to even today, we've purchased more, about probably 50% on the domestic side of our inventory that we've sold has been wholesaled to another dealer.
This episode is brought to you by CDK Global, the go-to technology partner for car dealers and automakers. CDK doesn't just deliver top-tier tech solutions, they are also a trusted source for industry insights. Their research and insights team produces must-read white papers, blogs, and reports all year long. One of my favorite recent standouts is the Friction Points study. This unique report dives into the perspectives of both car buyers and dealership staff to uncover what's slowing down the purchase process. This year, it reveals how dealers are narrowing the gap on time expectations and why F&I remains a critical piece of the experience. If you want the full scoop, check out the Friction Points white paper and more at cdk.com/insights or click the link in the show notes below.
Wow. So you're saying your inventory acquisition, a new side, you're getting from other dealers.
We were up until the end of last year, we were having to do that. And so, and
When your metrics looked better, your CSI rose and stuff like that.
absolutely. So we got the inventory, let's just say for our Ford Little Rock store.
Hmm.
We finally got the inventory in because we were purchasing it from an outside dealers. And we
Hmm.
said, we're not going to screw this up. We're not worried about profit. We're not worried about anything else. We just want to sell this vehicle. And when we sell the car, we want the customer to feel like they've been taken care of and just they're happy.
Wow.
And so for over a year especially at our domestic stores, we lost money because we were buying cars over invoice and we were selling them 1,000, 2,000 back of invoice to increase our volume and buy back our market share that we had lost.
Wow. And were you getting any rebates on any of that? Holdback? I mean, anything on these
No, I mean
units?
a
Nothing.
lot of the units you would buy at invoice minus holdback because the dealers that had the inventory didn't really have much incentive to give them up, and so we were
Yeah.
buying aged inventory from dealers that was not attracted to these customers. And
So you guys took a big step back to take steps forward. Now, how are we looking today? Are all your stores profitable again? How have things actually changed? Like, give us the details of the turnaround, because I think a lot of people kind of beat their chest, talk about how they're great, but I think you're harping here on a good point. Not everyone can be number one, two, three, or even four or five,
sure,
right? There's always going to be people at the end,
sure.
and I think knowing the details of that turnaround is very important.
Yeah, I mean, right now we're more profitable than we've ever been in this 2 year period. I've got a interesting take that the conclusion that I've come to over this past 2 or 3 months is that the average expense for a car dealership is growing, and
That's correct.
and it's not going to change. You can't cut your expenses in order to get the net profits back that you've had in the past, especially the COVID year. So everyone is used to, a lot of these dealers are used to these profits that took place in 2020, 2021, and 2022. And those are no more from what I've seen. And so what we're doing is, yes, we are making money, but we think the only way that we can actually get anywhere near the profits that we've seen in years behind us is we've got to sell a lot of new vehicles and make up the gross that we're losing on the new vehicles on by selling used vehicles and being in that 1-to-1 used to new ratio, being profitable.
What are your biggest areas of opportunity right now? When you think about like department by department,
Yeah,
where would you say you're underperforming most?
fixed ops, 100%. I
Why?
think our service departments, customers talk, customers know exactly which service department they need to go to, which one treats customers poorly. And that has been the hardest thing to rebrand in the past 2 years because of how bad, how poorly our name got, and how bad our customer service was. And so fixed ops is
Yeah.
what we're 100%, we're putting most of our time to right now is getting the customers back that we've sold to, and then retaining them as we service their vehicles. And I think that is where really all dealers can make it happen. And one thing that we're trying to do is reduce our amount of time it takes to get just your quick lube stuff done. And so we shoot for 40 minutes in and out, and the customer is paid up and ready to go in 40 minutes, just if they were to come in and get their regular lube oil and filter work done. And we've really, at a lot of our dealerships, we've been able to do that. And I think, you've got all of these independent service shops, and I think that's their biggest selling point, and that's the only thing that they can really compete with dealerships on, is we can get you in and out very quickly. And that's not what customers are really used to with dealership and franchise places. And so that's what we've worked on.
Christian, how is the redemption process been with OEMs, right?
So
what is that? At what point did they say, maybe we'll reconsider? Like, how have you gone about that?
It's been a lot of work. We've had a really fortunate deal with who we've been able to employ and who we've been able to partner with in order to be successful as far as in the eyes of the manufacturer. And so we use a company called LTD Connect to do all of our marketing, and they're based out of Arkansas. And they have really just bought into our mindset of we've got to turn this around, because if we don't, then we have the manufacturers to deal with.
Wait, so tell me, what type of marketing are you talking about here? Like, what is this company doing for you specifically?
So LTD Connect, it's a company that's ran by a guy named Drew Dees, who worked for Crain Automotive.
Drew Brees used to be a quarterback on the Saints.
Right, it's Drew Dees. He worked for Crain as our head marketing director and left about the same time that my dad and uncle did, due to similar problems. And he started his own firm, and he's got several employees that work for him, and they are just a full one-stop shop marketing firm. And
are you happy with that? With outsourcing? Are you happy with outsourcing your marketing?
I don't want to outsource anything. That is one strategy that I've got for our future. With this company, it feels like, with the connections that we have with him, with the cost of,
he's got all the tribal knowledge.
He's got all the knowledge. That this is one area that if you do outsource it, you're not hurting yourself as much as if you outsource other areas of the business. And so we've been very pleased with it.
And has your messaging changed? As you said, as your culture has changed, you've put more of an emphasis on thinking longer term, the people and the customer. Has your messaging changed in your marketing? Has anything evolved there?
Yeah, 100%. So our messaging has gone from we don't care about you in a way to we are 100% community focused, and we're all in on the customer, and we will make sure that the customer is satisfied with when they shop with us or service with us.
How does that actually manifest in the day to day? Because at the end of the day, you got to make a buck,
Sure.
You got to make a profit. Not saying that conflicts with a good customer experience, but like, how does that really manifest in your stores? If I bought a car 3 years ago versus today, I come into the store, okay, fine, I'm not paying over MSRP, but is anything else feel different?
Yeah, you have employees that you would come in and you would actually feel like, this guy wants me to get a good deal. This guy is going to follow up with me. I'm not just going to pay him for a car and he's going to forget about me, or I'm going to forget about him. You're going in, when you shop at Crain, Now you go in and you've got a salesperson who's going to sell you a vehicle, make sure that the rate, the products you buy on the back end, everything works for you. And then that person's going to follow up with you to help you ensure that you're getting your vehicle serviced properly, anything that you need taken care of on the dealership end.
It seems like you've really put an emphasis on communication.
Communication and collaboration has been huge for us. Going in and telling speaking with every employee. I mean, we've got 1,300 of them, and every employee, and telling them,
Wow.
listen, we are people over profit. We want to make sure that we sell the customer the car, yes, but their experience with their shopping process is a lot more important than actually getting the car sold to them.
Okay, so dude, tell us like what's next? What's the store? What are you focusing on now at the group? Like, what are the top priorities?
Yeah, so we're still focused on people, employees. That has been my main deal. I'm not an expert in desking a car deal. I'm not an expert in F&I, but what I do know is that you don't have to be an expert in order to be a good leader in anything. And so what we're doing and will continue to do is let's get the right people for the locations that we have, even if it means we have to pay too much money for it. Let's get the right people for them. Let's get the right people, and they will, over a period of time, make you more successful.
And I would agree with you that, as a leader, you don't need to be an expert in everything. I do believe that you need to know a little bit about a lot.
Sure.
Because my next question would be, how do you know they're not, someone, a manager or someone is not bullshitting you? I just had this conversation actually with another dealer from Tennessee, Chase, who was on the podcast, and he came up the F&I track.
Yeah.
And he explains why that's has been so critical for success. So anyways, back to you, right? Like, how do you avoid that situations of just, a manager BSing you or something like
Sure.
that?
Well, first of all, you make sure that before you hire them, they're going to be very unlikely to bullshit you. That's the first step. Second step is the numbers. At the end of the day, they're not going to lie. So whether the person that is communicating with you is telling you one thing, the numbers. I have a degree in accounting from the University of Arkansas, and that's numbers will never lie. And if you have proper accounting, then they can tell you whatever they want to, but the numbers don't lie.
If someone came to you today, someone younger than you, said, "Hey, I want to run a store one day," what would you tell them based on your experience thus far?
I would say first thing you need to do is go work in a dealership for 6 months at least and just understand the business. And then you need to go to NADA Academy and work in that same dealership.
Did you go?
I did.
Did you go?
I went.
How was that?
I went about 6 months into my tenure and full-time tenure in the car business, and I absolutely loved it. I think I would encourage everybody that has the means and abilities to go to do it, because the things that you're able to see on it pretty much forces you to look at things on a 30,000 foot level, right? And the things that you learn and the ideas, they're special. And I came away from it like, oh my gosh, like if I didn't know that, how much more am I missing out on? And so it really did. It exposed me to the idea of I'll never know everything about the car business. It humbled me for sure. But it's great. I still connect with several of the people that were in my class, and I call them frequently. They're probably annoyed by me, but I call them asking them for advice on how to handle certain situations. So,
the squeaky wheel gets the grease. You got to speak up.
That's right.
One of my favorite lines is like, you don't know what you don't know.
Sure.
Right. So back to like asking questions and kind of continuous learning. It served me really well. Just like you don't know what you don't know. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so you got to ask, you got to, I love when I have an idea. I love sharing it with lots of people. Some people are pretty cagey about their ideas and stuff. And I'm ruthless. Like I chuck my idea at the neighbor, at the mailman. Like I'm just like out there chucking my idea everywhere. And everyone gives you perspective, right? And you start learning things, right? You acquire knowledge. So I'm all about that. Just kind of, crowdsourcing that information and just, put it out there, see what happens.
If you don't know something, I would tell anybody this. If you don't know something, the worst thing you can do is act like you know it and act like you know about it or offer any sort of solution, because people are smart, probably a lot smarter than you would ever give them credit for, and they're going to know if you're speaking on something that you don't know about. And something that I've seen be successful for just me personally is if I'm in a meeting holding a general manager meeting with 8 general managers and I don't know something, I'll make that clear to them that this is an area that I'm not familiar on. And that encourages them and that makes them feel more responsible to take over that area and actually train me. And so I've got a
Yeah,
lot of really
absolutely.
we've got a lot of really good people. I know I've harped on that a lot, but we have this one at work.
No, you guys have done a turnaround. It's important.
Right, right.
So if we chat in like say, or let's say a year from today, like what's different about Crain Automotive then? How have you progressed? How do you like? What's the vision? And I know a year is not that long of a time, but
Yeah.
give me, the 1 year vision.
So we've fixed what we believe to have fixed every problem, short term, long term problem that we've had. Our customers are buying from us again. We have much better CSI scores. We've gotten rid of RV locations that we had no business ever being in, and we're back and we're in business, and we've adjusted the way we do things based on what we have. In a year from now, I would hope to have acquired, probably 1 or 3 car dealerships, new franchises, and that growth and implementing the model that we have at each dealership in those new locations. And I don't see the way we're doing it. I don't see how it can't be successful. I mean, it's a really good operation.
This episode is brought to you by CDG Recruiting. The Car Dealership Guy platform has direct access to thousands of skilled professionals in the dealership and automotive industries. And so, building on top of our free industry job board, we've launched CDG Recruiting, a hands-on white glove automotive recruiting service. Whether you're looking to fill roles in dealership management, the C-suite, F&I, fixed ops, auto tech, or SaaS, we take the hassle out of hiring by doing the heavy lifting for you. It's easy. Start by submitting a confidential talent request on our website. Next, we connect you with a dedicated talent expert who will thoroughly understand your unique needs. And finally, we present you with top-notch candidates who are ready to drive your business forward. And here's the best part. We vet and screen every candidate for you so you don't have to. And with our placement guarantee, hiring through CDG Recruiting is 100% worry-free. Collectively, our team has decades of experience and has successfully placed over 1,000 roles in the automotive industry, so you know you're in good hands. If you're ready to find your next rockstar employee, try CDG Recruiting today by visiting cdgrecruiting.com or clicking the link in the show notes below. Again, that's cdgrecruiting.com.
1 to 3 stores in a year is pretty aggressive.
Sure.
Do you think you're risking like indigestion, like growing too quickly, or like how do you think about that? Why is that a goal, and then how do you go about that?
Yeah. So we've proved to ourselves that we can grow very quickly. In 2023, we sold 20,000 total vehicles. In 2025, we're going to sell about 45,000. So we have built our
Wow.
Right. We've built our accounting staff. We've built our corporate support up to be able to operate about 30 to 40 franchises. So we've pulled back.
So it's all leverage at this point,
Right.
Or a lot of leverage,
Right. So we're set up now to be able to really grow, and I think there's a lot of opportunity out there. I don't want to spill the beans, but I would buy any Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep dealership in the Southeast because I think that's you're betting on the come, and that's very probable that they're going to bring it back. I mean, and so I think there's a.
I think it's a good time. I think Stellantis. I don't think it's the trough anymore. Actually, I actually think it's already on the rise.
Right, and we just finished a buy sell. We opened on it in 4/1, so 8 days ago with one of our partners.
Wow. What store?
Chrysler, Stellantis.
You bought a Chrysler?
Mm-hmm. And we probably paid too much for it. We definitely paid too much on the property, but I think that store is going to succeed, and it shows that these things are still profitable, and that no matter how poorly you perform, any good operator can go in there and make it way better than they found it.
What do you mean when you say we probably pay too much for it, like the property? Are you strictly talking about like,
Yeah, well, Blue Sky,
how much? Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I mean, as far as Blue Sky goes, I don't think there's any way you can calculate it, because if you were just to go off net profit, then we definitely paid too much. But on the property, these values that we purchased, these values you don't know what the values are on these properties because it's all dependent on that dealership being in business and paying the rent, right? And so you have all these car dealerships in Arkansas, especially, that if the franchises were to shut down or they weren't able to stay there, then there's not replacements for these businesses. And so I think that the properties that you do buy, when you do a buy sell, if you do buy the land, you're probably going to pay too much because the value comes from the tenant and what they're paying. And so that's kind of what.
And prior to this last acquisition, did you do any other recent acquisitions?
So we sold 3 RV points to Camping World. That was really cool because I got to work hand in hand with Marcus Lemonis, the CEO there. I was almost as big a fan of him as I am you. He was over.
My man.
He ran the Profit TV show. He was the main guy. And
Marcus Lemonis.
I remember watching that, and then I was like, oh my gosh, like you're here and you're buying 3 of our dealerships. So I was heavily involved in that, and I got to learn just so much. And then we sold a Mazda franchise in 2024, mid 2024, about a year ago. And so we restructured. We got rid of things that we knew we didn't want to invest the time or the energy to be good at, and we scaled back to what we are good at, which is selling a lot of cars and taking really good care of customers and employees. And now we're set to be able to grow.
Wow, that's amazing. So Christian, leave us off with just a little word of wisdom from your family, all the changes you've gone through and what you've learned just being in, like I said, you've kind of been thrown here into the fire, and sometimes that's the best way to learn. Especially when there's adversity, which your family has faced. So,
sure.
Give us a little tip before we wrap up.
Man, it's tough. I've learned so much in my life just because of the car business. I've been able to witness rise and falls of empires within our business, and what I've seen is that the people who have had the most success, they are always focused on the people over the profit, and they're focused on, when I say people, that includes the manufacturer relationships. The people who want, the operators who want long-term success have got to be focused on the people, and the profit, if you manage it properly, will come with that in tenfold, and it'll be a lot more sustainable than the short term.
Well said. Christian, any final thoughts before we wrap up?
Man, I'm just happy to be here. I really do appreciate you.
Are you a fan? What do you like? What do you tune into? The podcast, the newsletter, social? I'm just curious.
Yeah, well, I'm on your newsletter. I'm on your social. I listen to as many of the podcasts as I can. But it's funny, the way that I found you, it was about a year and a half ago, I think, and somebody had sent me, one of my buddies he plays in the MLB, he sent me a report. Oh, it was the CDK crash. That's what it was, or the CDK hacking. And he sent me a report from the car dealership guy. I think it's a tweet. And and I was like, well, who is this guy?
I know that guy,
right?
The car dealership guy. He's a good guy, yeah.
And so I do know now. I know you now, and I think this has been
that's awesome.
This has been good. I really do appreciate you.
I appreciate it, man, dude. Well, thanks for coming on and being so vulnerable and authentic about your story, man.
Absolutely.
Really kind of, wish you all the best here. I'm sure you guys are going to keep growing and do some great things, and keep sponging it up. It's the best way to learn, asking questions.
Yeah.
But it's cool to hear your story and kind of how you guys have had a turnaround, man.
Yeah.
So I appreciate you sharing it with us.
Well, I appreciate you.
Thanks, man.
Alrighty.
All right. Hope you enjoyed that episode. Please give the podcast a rating, consider subscribing to the show, and check the show notes for links to what we talked about. Thanks for tuning in. I'll see you guys next time.